What is up, guys? You got NotTheWorst here bringing another Black Desert online video, and today we're taking a look at the Global Labs patch that was introduced on May 3rd, just a couple of days ago. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, this is a pretty juicy one. I don't always cover the Global Labs every single week, since sometimes there's some pretty lackluster stuff or not much going on or just tweaks, but this one we are definitely not skipping. There is a lot of stuff going on here, so if you're looking for something specific listed, you can use the timestamps in it. If you want to check everything out, buckle up, because we've got a lot to cover. First thing is the accuracy evasion / DR rework. Now, to note, I just want to make sure we realize this isn't necessarily just because they decided to change these things. This is fallout based on the changes that they're doing to adjust the number of hits, right? So they made a statement, if you weren't aware, at one of the late night commentaries a little while back, that they wanted to work to improve server performance, and they're extremely aware of one way to accomplish this is to reduce the number of hits that are done on a skill. So something like in current state, if you have a skill that does 100 damage with 10 hits, so you functionally do a total of 1,000 damage if they all land, then in future state it would be something more like it does 500 damage with 2 hits. So you're still dealing that 1,000 damage, but by reducing the number of hits, it reduces a lot of the strain on the servers, and the overall performance is increased. You would especially see this in larger skill things and better performance kind of across the board, which is obviously a good goal to have. So they have to then make adjustments to things like accuracy and evasion, and while doing that, DR then ends up getting reworked, as it probably should have been 5 years ago. And the reason for that is, I'll just use an example we were talking about in the Discord a bit earlier. If you have a certain setup now, and we'll use the same damage values we were talking about a second ago. In current state, let's say you're a hard cap evasion player and your opponent's using a skill with no additional base accuracy, they have an 80% hit chance against you. So if you use your skill that does 100 damage with 10 hits, on average, you're going to land 8 of those. Excuse me, you're going to land 2 of those, and they'll evade 8 of them with their 80% hit chance, right? You have 0 accuracy and you're trash, right? So they're going to take 200 damage from this skill. The future state, what they're saying in this very long segment here, although we're going to touch on some other points that they mentioned there, they would have that 500 damage with 2 hits, and again, we're just making up numbers. We don't actually get numbers so far from what they're saying. 500, and then 2 hits of that. There's a 64% chance that you're now going to take no damage. You're always going to evade both of those 64% of the time. Again, we're dealing with averages here. So just changing the number of hits and not adjusting the interaction between accuracy and evasion would actually give evasion a pretty decent power creep to where it's kind of broken at that point. They were aware of this ahead of time and mentioned it in the original late night commentary, and what they're saying in this very long page here is that they're aware of that and they're going to be making adjustments accordingly. So what they're mapping out at the moment is, rather than having evasion evade the totality of hits, because with lower numbers of hits that's going to slate in evasion's favor quite a bit in most scenarios, they're thinking about having it where it reduces X amount of damage. Now, we don't know how much, we don't have the values for these. This is what they're kind of going with now. So it functionally would kind of work like how DR does. DR is being countered by AP amounts, and then evasion would reduce damage taken but be countered by your accuracy number, right? So in that scenario, you have something along the lines of, now instead of evading your opponent's hit 80% of the time with them applying 10 hits, you are now decreasing the damage taken if when the accuracy check is run by 80%, right? So if that happens, and we're in the new scenario where you deal a skill that has 500 damage with 2 hits, and you reduce that damage by 80% because of the evasion to accuracy check that takes place, you ultimately end up taking 200 damage. Whereas in the today's scenario, you would also have only taken, on average, 200 damage. Things to note, obviously, is we're just making these numbers up. We don't have them. That's just an example of like how it is current state, and could be the same future state with the way that they're trying to go with it. And then other thing to keep in mind is, if it's done that way, there's no roll that's taking place, right? Like if you're doing 2 hits of 500 damage for a maximum of 1,000 damage, and the accuracy versus evasion check says that they're going to reduce that damage by 80% because your accuracy is so low, they're always going to only receive 200 damage in that scenario. Whereas in current state, it's 100 damage, 10 hits, and 80% of the time there's a roll that's taking place every single time on it, so it's not always going to be 200, right? It's going to be an average number of times that we see it come out to 200 damage taken. It's entirely possible they evade everything, although extremely unlikely, and it's entirely possible they take the full 1,000 damage in current state, although even more unlikely for that scenario to occur. So just kind of throwing that out there with what they're what they're kind of doing, and then we'll touch on a few points too, because they're going to adjust DR a bit, but again, we don't get specifics. So along with reducing number of hits, many areas of accuracy, evasion, damage reduction will be readjusted. The scenario we just ran through explains why that's needed. Evasion is changed from a concept when the damage is 0 and successful to a method where the damage decreases depending on the relationship with accuracy. Damage reduction ability is going to be increased compared to before. We don't know what that means other than it's going to be more functional. And accordingly, the accuracy, evasion, and damage reduction effects for each class's skills are also going to be adjusted. So the takeaway from what we get in this is that they're going to rework DR so that it's more efficient than it is today. Evasion is going to be reworked as well, potentially to where it's going to be basically a damage reduction. You could even change the name and not call it evasion if you want. I'm actually more familiar with other MMOs where if running evasion actually is a damage reduction effect and not fully evading the skill. But it's going to be matched in a way that building all-out evasion versus all-out DR ends up with a similar result, whereas today building all-out DR is semi-meme outside of like a couple of classes and certain builds, and they're never dealing damage to anyone at the same time, and whereas evasion, especially on some of the stronger evasion classes, is 100% viable and actually pretty godly in some matchups, right? So that's what they're doing. We don't have an explicit deadline for this sort of thing. If I had to guess, I would guess that we'll hear more about this probably in the ball that's coming up June 22nd, so next month, about a month and a half to go before we see that, but that's what they're looking at doing now, so pretty interesting stuff. It'll be really cool to see how that ends up playing out, and anything that's going to improve server performance I think is going to be pretty hard to not get behind in general, as long as it doesn't break anything else. So moving into other topics, and this is a pretty big one, the Debo Ring is now put onto the global labs, and they outline for us how it is obtained. So this item's not going to drop by itself. You get it from Erethea's Limbo, which you may be familiar with from the Winter Zone, Eternal Winter existing, except that place has been changed. Another thing we don't have specifics on is what the new Erethea's Limbo is like to a T, as far as like what the mechanics and whatnot are, but they kind of outline, you know, like how you're going to go there, and then you're going to go into a room and then another room similar to the previous one. Obviously, it'll be upgraded to a newer version of it with different mechanics for each room when it goes live, since this is a more difficult item that you're going after. So to get the Debo Rings, they will not drop anywhere, but the Witch's Token, Forgotten Witch's Token, will be the new version that's going to drop. Gets you into Erethea's Limbo, and when you complete it, you're guaranteed 2 Debo Rings out of it, and you have a chance based on RNG to obtain additional rings. So this is going to be 2+ per token. There's also pity pieces that are implemented, which I think they have a picture of here, or am I misremembering that? Yeah, here it is. They've got pity pieces as well, where you can obtain 100 of these throughout Erethea's Limbo, and then cash that out for a Debo Ring as well. So that means every time you drop a Forgotten Witches token, you've just dropped 2 Debo Rings, and on average, it's going to be 2 point something, right? Because of the RNG rolls on opening treasure chests at the end have a chance to give you more rings, and then of course the Star of Oblivion is what the translated name here is. That is the pity piece for Debo Rings, so maybe it comes out 2.3, 2.5, whatever, who knows how often these actually show up. As far as obtaining that Witch's Token, they changed what they said from the previous ball of it being a total stat version to it's going to drop in zones that have a recommended AP of 310. So previously it would have only included the Olakita spots outside of City of the Dead, so it would have just been Tungrad Ruins, Highlands, and Darkseeker's Retreat. I'm very happy to see they expanded that, so it's going to be this full list, so those 3 plus City of the Dead. It will also include Decky-Lantern versions of Tauros, Olin's Valley, Thornwood Forest, Ash Forest, Cyclops, and then it will include the Quint Hill as well, which is actually drastically easier than all of the other spots listed, but there you have that. So we don't know that the drop rate's going to be the same or different with each of them. They note that it's going to be a very low probability to drop the token. If we think about this in terms of it being a minimum of 2 Debo Rings, I don't think it's outside the realm of thinking about this item dropping on average something like 10 to 20 hours each. Obviously, higher efficiency players will get it to drop more often because they're clearing more packs than lower efficiency, which is why I give such a broad range of 10 to 20, and I'm just guessing. We have absolutely no idea. And then we don't know that, you know, some spots might drop it more often than others, because I think we can all agree Quint Hill's difficulty level is quite a bit different than Tungrad Ruins in difficulty level, and Ash Forest difficulty level is quite a bit different than City of the Dead's difficulty level as far as like grinding there, so making them all drop the same amount would be a little bit odd, but, you know, we've seen stranger things. For sure. Another update, speaking about Tungrad Ruins here, they are changing this spot. This one's got a short paragraph, so I'll go ahead and read it, and then if you're not familiar with the spot, I'll kind of explain what it means. Tungrad Ruins is a monster zone where you kill hordes of monsters using the Essence of Olakita effect that you get through killing the Tungrad Visionary. it translated a bit differently, but it's called the Visionary. However, some classes are unable to continue grinding while maintaining this effect. If you don't know, in current state, you have to apply, well, when you have that, you have to apply a bound or KD from range, or at least without aggroing the Visionary, to be able to keep that buff up, and it allows you to burn through the mob very quickly and maintain the buff 100% of the time. So not all classes actually have the ability to maintain that, or some classes have a way easier time maintaining that than other classes. So they want to solidify the Tungrad Ruins grind in general. Obviously, tying in with the release of Debo Rings is going to be pivotal there, so that all classes have a much closer ability to grind here than others, so there aren't just some complete runaway classes that can use that mechanic. So what they're doing is that the Tungrad Visionary, his HP is just being cut by 50%, so you're functionally going to just kill him even faster than you do in current state when you have the green buff on. The green buff is no longer going to affect killing the Visionary at all. So they reduce his health by 50%, but when you have the green, it doesn't matter if you have green buff or not, he's unaffected by it. He just dies faster outright. They're also buffing the effect of the green buff as well, so that's important to note. And then the Ascetic and the, I think the Executioner, actually call it, not Punisher, they've been changed to receive the defense increase effect until the Visionary falls and releases its energy, which is kind of similar to now. Defense increase effect is removed when the fallen Tungrad Visionary releases its energy. The Punisher has been changed to no longer remove the sorry, did I say Punisher? Bringer has been changed to no longer remove the green buff effect. Health conditions when the Bringer is killed while flying have been changed. I didn't know this was a thing, but I'm not really flying around. Killing when remaining health is 20% to killing when remaining health is 30%. I'm hoping that that means that's affecting when you don't get the paralysis effect that happens when you kill the Visionary. So they've changed it up to 30% instead of 20%, because if you've noticed, if you do like a single skill or like a BSR skill where they go from 20% to 0 right away, it actually won't apply the paralysis effect on it, so maybe that will help reduce the number of times that happens. The effect itself is increased by 1.4 times, so the buff that you're getting from it is just flat out better. And this, again, makes it much more accessible to every class to be able to do. I'm expecting trash loot numbers to just increase on this spot, where it's already either, depending on the server, it's either the best money per hour right now in the game or close to it on most servers. City of the Dead's getting an adjustment as well. They are going to make it so that the little teleporty guy doesn't teleport as far. He's going to teleport it faster as well, and when you have the elite dudes and whatnot that get called by the event spawn that happens there, they're going to trigger much faster. They'll get around to you much faster. There's not as much waiting around for those mobs to get closer to the little knight dude that rides his horse to get there a bit faster. So that'll be pretty handy and less time consuming and kind of less annoying. Crypto Resting Thoughts gets a little bit of an adjustment here. The Dark Knight is what's getting changed. He's no longer going to appear for a certain amount of time, and then he'll guaranteed spawn, which is going to be 6 minutes once you've started actually grinding there. Then after 3 minutes that you're in a non-combat state, he's going to hide himself in the darkness again, so a reset occurs at that point. So they're just kind of streamlining when that's going to spawn. And then for Quint Hill, they are changing Agris effect, and this is kind of a big nerf to that spot because it's actually really good with Agris. It's not going to work anymore on the following monsters: Ancient Troll Warrior, and Ancient Troll Slinger Shaman and Elite Warrior. You may be asking, what does that mean? It means Agris is not getting used to Quint Hill pretty much at all anymore. So yeah, it's definitely a nerf to Quint Hill in general, but with Debo Rings coming out and dropping there, I guess internally they've decided that was pretty necessary. So last note here is the Siege and Node War changes. There were some big moves to the Siege and Node Wars in the past couple of Global Lab patches, and there was some player feedback, which they mention here about the number of players for it. So they've made adjustments based on that feedback, and as usual said they'll continue monitoring feedback. So I'll read that one real quick. Since the Node Wars reorganized, adventurers in each region have been sending us a lot of interest and opinions, and there's a major change to the content enjoyed by many adventurers. We also value the sentiments you've conveyed, yada, yada, yada. Among the comments sent today, the part about the number of participants has changed. According to the changed number of people, the number of war heroes participating has also been adjusted. We'll respond more flexibly to the changed number of participants, taking into account the actual participation status in each region, and opinions received and expanding if expansion is then necessary. So if you're not familiar, they outline it for you here, but in general, the community said your numbers are for max participants is whack because not everybody's going to be able to manage this on every server. So previously for the Balanos and Serendia level, which has the 550 stat cap, it was 35 people. It's going to be 30 people, and it's going to maintain one war hero allowed. The Medea and Valencia, which is the 685 cap, had a 70 person maximum number. It's now going to be down to 50, making the war hero go from 3 down to 2. And then Calphion and Kalma Sylvia, which are uncapped, in this future NotTheWorst state. It's going to go from 100 people cap to 75 people cap, and then the War Hero 5 down to 3. I've only heard positive feedback about this. I haven't participated in NotTheWorst in over a year at this point personally, so no direct impact here, but I've heard some really good feedback in general from this, as opposed to previously with these numbers on the left-hand side being in it. Nobody seemed to be very happy about that. Only other thing I'm hearing is they want the caps adjusted as well for it, but we'll see how that plays out long term. So that's pretty much it. There's some item adjustments and UI fixes and whatnot as usual on those things, so nothing else really of note. Let me know what you guys think about what's going on in the comments down below. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to like it. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe so you get notifications when new videos go live. And if you'd like to catch me playing live, there's a link to my Twitch page in the description down below. Jump on over there, drop a follow so you get notifications for that as well. With that said, that's going to be it for this one. I want to thank everybody for watching, and I will see you next time.